Eleanor Roosevelt was born on October 11th, 1884, into one of the wealthiest families in New York City. Her father, Elliot Roosevelt, was the brother of Theodore Roosevelt, who would later become President of the United States. Her mother, Anna Hall Roosevelt, was known for her beauty and social standing. To outsiders, it seemed like Eleanor was destined for a life of privilege and ease. However, her early life was filled with challenges that would shape her into one of the most influential women in history. Eleanor's childhood was marked by tragedy. She was a shy and serious child who often felt unloved, especially by her mother, who was critical of Eleanor's looks, calling her Granny because she thought Eleanor looked old-fashioned. This harsh treatment affected Eleanor's self-esteem deeply. When Eleanor was just 8 years old, her mother died of diphtheria. 2 years later, her father, whom she adored, died from alcoholism-related issues. These losses left Eleanor feeling alone and abandoned. After her parents' deaths, Eleanor and her younger brother went to live with their strict grandmother, Mary Ludlow Hall, in Tivoli, New York. The atmosphere in her grandmother's home was cold and unwelcoming. Despite these hardships, Eleanor showed resilience. She focused on her education and self-improvement, determined to rise above the sadness that clouded her childhood. In 1899, at the age of 15, Eleanor's life changed when she was sent to Allenswood Academy, a finishing school in England. There, she met the school's headmistress, Marie Souvestre, a remarkable woman who had a profound influence on Eleanor. Marie Souvestre was known for encouraging independent thinking in young women, and she opened Eleanor's mind to the world beyond the privileged society she had grown up in. For the first time, Eleanor felt like she had found a mentor who believed in her potential. Souvestre encouraged Eleanor to think critically, to question societal norms, and to develop her own opinions on important issues like poverty, social justice, and women's rights. These teachings would stay with Eleanor for the rest of her life, and Allenswood was where she first began to find her voice. Upon returning to the United States, Eleanor re-entered New York society, but she never felt entirely comfortable in it. At 20, she married Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a distant cousin who would later become president. Their wedding was attended by Eleanor's uncle, President Theodore Roosevelt, who famously gave Eleanor away. In the early years of their marriage, Eleanor played the traditional role of wife and mother. She had 6 children, though one of them, Franklin Jr., died in infancy. Her marriage to Franklin was complex. While they cared deeply for each other, Franklin was often busy with his political career, leaving Eleanor to manage the household. Eleanor also discovered that Franklin had an affair with her social secretary, Lucy Mercer, which nearly ended their marriage in 1918. Though they stayed together, their relationship became more of a political partnership than a romantic one. Rather than let the affair break her spirit, Eleanor chose to focus on personal growth and public service. She began to volunteer for causes she cared about, like improving housing for the poor and advocating for women's rights. Eleanor's interest in social reform grew, and she became involved with the Women's Trade Union League and the League of Women Voters, organizations that worked to improve working conditions and promote gender equality. In 1921, Franklin Roosevelt was diagnosed with polio, which left him paralyzed from the waist down. At the time, many thought his political career was over. However, Franklin was determined to remain active in politics, and Eleanor played a crucial role in helping him do so. She became his eyes and ears, attending political events and delivering speeches on his behalf. Eleanor's work helped keep Franklin's name in the public eye and paved the way for his return to politics. This period was a significant turning point for Eleanor. She gained confidence in her abilities as a public speaker and political leader. Her deep empathy and ability to connect with ordinary people made her a powerful advocate for social justice. She became involved with the Democratic Party and began writing for various publications, sharing her views on important issues of the day. In 1933, Franklin Roosevelt was elected as the 32nd President of the United States, making Eleanor the First Lady. But unlike previous First Ladies, Eleanor refused to stay in the background. She transformed the role into one of active leadership and advocacy. At a time when women were expected to be silent supporters of their husbands, Eleanor broke all the rules. She held regular press conferences, something no other First Lady had done before. However, she only invited female journalists to attend in an effort to help women succeed in the male-dominated field of journalism. This bold move ensured that more newspapers hired women reporters as they needed to cover Eleanor's press conferences. Eleanor traveled extensively, visiting coal mines, farms, schools, and factories to learn firsthand about the struggles Americans were facing during the Great Depression. She wanted to understand the problems of ordinary people so she could advocate for solutions. This was unusual for a First Lady, but it was exactly what the country needed during such a difficult time. In addition to her travels, Eleanor wrote a daily newspaper column titled My Day, where she shared her thoughts on everything from politics to personal experiences. This column made her even more accessible to the American people, who admired her honesty and commitment to public service. One of Eleanor's most lasting legacies is her work in the field of civil rights. At a time when racial segregation was legal and widely accepted, Eleanor spoke out against racial discrimination. She believed deeply that all people, regardless of race, deserved equal rights. A pivotal moment in her civil rights work came in 1939, when the Daughters of the American Revolution, DAR, refused to allow Marian Anderson, a world-famous black singer, to perform at Constitution Hall in Washington, D.C. because of her race. Eleanor was a member of the DAR, but she resigned in protest of their decision. She then helped arrange for Marian Anderson to perform on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial instead, in a concert attended by over 75,000 people and broadcast to millions on the radio. This act of defiance made Eleanor a hero to the civil rights movement. She also supported African-American civil rights leader Walter White and the NAACP in their fight against lynching, although President Franklin Roosevelt was reluctant to push for an anti-lynching law. Eleanor continued to use her platform to promote equality and justice for all. During World War II, Eleanor played an active role in supporting the war effort. She visited American soldiers overseas and worked to boost morale. In 1943, she traveled to the Pacific and Europe to meet with troops, even visiting dangerous war zones. She wanted to see for herself the conditions soldiers were living in and to report back to the president. After Franklin's death in 1945, many assumed that Eleanor would retire from public life. But instead, she became even more involved in global issues. President Harry Truman appointed her as a delegate to the newly formed United Nations, UN. There, she chaired the committee that drafted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a landmark document that outlined the fundamental rights and freedoms all people should have. Eleanor believed this was one of her greatest accomplishments, and her work with the UN earned her the title First Lady of the World. Eleanor Roosevelt passed away on November 7, 1962, but her legacy continues to inspire people around the world. She once said, "Do what you feel in your heart to be right, for you'll be criticized anyway." This quote encapsulates her fearless approach to life and her determination to fight for justice, even when it was unpopular. Eleanor's story is one of transformation, from a shy, insecure girl who felt unloved to a world leader who changed the course of history. Her contributions to civil rights, women's rights, and global human rights are still felt today. Eleanor Roosevelt's life is an inspiring tale of resilience, courage, and the power of empathy. Through her work as First Lady and beyond, she redefined what it meant to be a leader, leaving a lasting impact on American society and the world. Her story reminds us that even in the face of personal tragedy and societal challenges, one person can make a profound difference.